All right, let's get these mics tested. Welcome, everyone. We're live here at the Swan Dome at Bitcoin 2021. My voice is a little harsh after 3 nights of hanging out with everybody. It's been a beautiful experience to meet all these Bitcoiners. Big love to everybody out there. We've got a panel to start the day here at live from the Swan Dome. We're going to have sessions all day long throughout the day. So join us. We've got some great ones. Here today, we've got Brandon Quittem. You all know him. He's head of communications at Swan. Wrote that piece about comparing Bitcoin to mushrooms and mycelium. Fantastic piece. We got some fans out there for the mushroom dude. We got Jeremy Rubin. He's a core dev. He's a badass. So you guys should give him a round of applause too. Thank you to core devs out there making this thing possible, working hard. And CJ Wilson. He is a business owner, entrepreneur. He's a Bitcoiner through and through. He's also a very, very. Were you an all-star? You were an all-star one year, right? Yeah, an all-star pitcher in the MLB. So also a badass. Let's give CJ a round of applause. Thanks for being here. All right. Oh, all right. So apparently CJ can cook too. This guy can do everything. All right. Well, guys, I'm glad for that we're here. How's your experience been so far? It's been an amazing thing to like meet all these Bitcoiners. And I was saying, we've got to come up with a word for this like new phenomenon that we've had for like 15 years now. People becoming like family, like friends online, never meeting each other in person, and then coming together and meeting. There's a weird thing, but no one can really describe it. We don't have a word for it yet. So yeah, CJ's gonna put one on the table here. Flocking. Okay. I don't know. Oh, there we go. My bad, guys. Flocking is always
Flocking.
flocking.
Yeah, we're flocking together.
Yeah. All right. That works.
I mean, here we're in the Swan Dome, right? So
we are. That's true.
yeah. So we form a flock. We're going in the same direction.
Well,
Yeah.
flock your mother if you're kind of flock.
We're like Waka Flocka.
Okay.
You know?
I dig it. Jeremy, how's it been, man?
It's been great. I think this is just a confluence. Anytime you get this many Bitcoiners, it hasn't happened, but some sort of critical mass of Bitcoiners together, it's always an amazing time. But this is also, I think, the first time for most people they're getting back together after COVID. So the energy here is just unreal right now.
There you go. Scoot that mic up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the energy's off the charts here. It's amazing. Brandon, what's been your experience so far?
Yeah, to go off the flock analogy, there's a type of bird, I think it's called a starlight. It's a little black bird, and it flies together in a unit. We call its friends. I think they call it agglomeration, but it resembles Bitcoin in many ways. It's all these birds acting independently, but they reference each other. The sum of their parts creates something larger.
Yeah, and you even see like where they flock together in the shape of a bird, and it looks like a giant bird.
Yeah, like a huge cloud of everything together. Yeah.
Yeah, and to tie it to Bitcoin quick, I had this idea yesterday, which is that I stemmed from the idea that it's so easy to talk to Bitcoiners. You walk around here, so much in common. And the analogy
Hey, Brandon,
here,
sorry, but you got to stay right up on the mic. When
Yeah,
you
my
turn your
bad.
head, yeah.
and the analogy
Yeah.
here is that the Bitcoin base layer is very simple. A few simple rules, and we agree to the values here. We uphold these values. And that's kind of like the Bitcoiners. We all have similar values, so we get to know each other. And that 80% at the bottom is all the values. And then you have the layer 2, that's our interests. You maybe like baseball, maybe you like meat, maybe you're a vegan. Those layer 2, layer 3 things are somewhat irrelevant as long as you have the base layer values together. So that's just a little thing like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to hear from you guys. Like, what do you guys think is the most exciting thing about Bitcoin? The most inspiring thing about Bitcoin for you as a Bitcoiner? You guys have all been in for quite a while now, and maybe you've gone through phases. But like right now, what are you most excited about? Start with you, CJ.
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, it's the fact that you can have a parallel path. If you're a business owner like myself, then you can be running your business, and Bitcoin is a component of your mentality in terms of planning for the future. But it's not necessarily, for me, I'm not a core dev, obviously, so it's not my day job. But it is something I think about every day. I build the community every day. I'm interacting with all you guys. We've met on Clubhouse, now we're meeting in Meet Space in real life, shaking hands, pressing the flesh. Breaking bread, all that stuff. And it's like for me, Bitcoin is a way to connect with the future. You know, it's a highway to the future because it's where we all want to go. It's what we want to happen.
Yeah.
And having a unified vision is like the most powerful thing that we can share as people. You know, is having a vision together, having a dream together. And we all go home to different places. We don't all live in a hippie commune or something like that. You know what I mean? Well, there's no citadel yet, right?
Right.
So until that happens, then we're all responsible for our local Bitcoiners and communicating with those people and the lessons that I learned and hearing everybody talk and getting that energy and taking that back home and exporting it and continuing to push the channels that I have. That's the most exciting thing for me. Is seeing everybody else, get more Bitcoin. Like I had an employee the other day that said, "Dude, I've got 1 Bitcoin now. I got a whole Bitcoin."
There's a whole
like,
thing.
"Fuck yeah, your ass, man." Like,
Nice.
awesome, And it's cool to see that,
It is awesome to see that. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Jeremy, what about you? What are you excited about?
Yeah, so one of the things that when I originally got into Bitcoin really excited me is this notion of be your own bank. And I think every day I see people working on services that you can self-host, run yourself, and become your own full-service financial institution. That gets me really going. Be your own bank. That is something that is going to continue improving day after day, year after year, and that gets me going. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm trying to build every day.
Beautiful, man. Brandon, what's got you going with Bitcoin?
Yeah, the thing that stands out for me, especially being at this conference, is seeing the brain drain from other industries and how people are willing to just take a pay cut, work for free, donate their time and talents to this thing that matters to them. And you're seeing extremely high caliber people circle around this thing. Like we were at a beefsteak event on Wednesday, and watching Cynthia Loomis walk by, grab a piece of steak, and start chatting with Russell Okung, football player, about sound money and how important that is, or Jack Dorsey saying, "I'll quit Twitter and swear if Bitcoin needs me." Right? You're seeing titans of the world cross the chasm. It's been de-risked, and just look at all the suits here today. Right? Bitcoiners don't have a high opinion of the suits, but it is an indication that Bitcoin's having a cultural moment, and people are coming into Bitcoin. Yeah, that makes me optimistic. How are you going to root against the smartest people who are on a mission to change the world, like building a cathedral brick by brick?
It's a bad thing to try to stand in the way of that. And we've seen it. We've seen like these people that are sort of advocates or heroes or whatever just get mauled, absolutely destroyed because they step out of line of the mission, right? And if you think about it, like if we're all on some sort of intergalactic space journey, like you don't open the fucking airlock.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like don't open the airlock, idiot. And then when people do that, we're like, okay, see ya. Like push them out. Lock them in and push them out. We don't need them. Like it's the sum. It's the sum of the people. That's what we care the most about is each other and the whole movement. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. I think you're hinting at Elon Musk, which is kind of fun to watch. He's going through this like very typical Bitcoin journey. Where you're like all in on Bitcoin. This is going to change the world. This is going to incentivize the development of renewable energy, and he's all in. And then he's like, oh, Dogecoin, that's he goes to the shitcoin route, and now he's like, looking at Ethereum, and it's interesting to watch happen on a scale of like probably one of the most well-known people in the world, 55 million followers on Twitter. So we're seeing this like very typical journey happen and play out in a very, very public way, and it's fascinating. Like it's so typical, and every single person goes through something like that. Although I have met quite a few Bitcoiners here that have kind of skipped past that. So you're seeing like actually a new group, like growing size cohorts that are just skipping past everything. So, what do you attribute that to, man?
I'll take this one off the start. I'm very, very inspired by the Zoomers, the young kids, because, like you said, they're coming into a world where there's no investable assets. They have no hope for the future. Everything around them feels fake. They see a bunch of old people who are disconnected from their world, and then they see this Bitcoin thing, and they see the energy there. They see people with hope for the future. They see people building something that they can stand behind. And combine that with, so they have a need, they have a desire, they have a motivation, combined with the fact that the Bitcoin content machine is running on all cylinders here. So the entry points to understanding Bitcoin at a deep level has been upgraded, probably 10x or 100, maybe 1,000x since 2017. So there's a million doors entering to find this. So choose your own adventure, and the kids are picking it up quick, and they're sharp.
I also like to think that every time a like boomer sycophantic economist goes and spouts off about how Bitcoin sucks, like a Zoomer hodler gains their wings, you know, because it's just kind of like, okay, boomer, you know, yeah, you're telling us that we're going to get this raw deal on society because it's what's good for everyone. Well, Bitcoin's good for me. Suck on it.
Yeah, and the thing is too, it's like it's part of the rite of passage that you have to dunk on these guys, right? As you get more comfortable, as you get more educated in the space, and the longer you're in it, you see these attack vectors that you can go after Schiff or Taleb or one of these guys.
Yeah.
And then collectively, I was talking to Ali from Tahini's earlier, and he did like a video on Twitter, and he was talking about like olive oil and stuff like that, because Taleb had some comment about that. And I was like, dude, I love that. And he's like, oh, I remember when you retweeted that. That was awesome. So it's just like, it's funny because, you know, like you said, you get your wings, right? You get like your little chevron star, you're like your military star for being a cyber hornet and stinging somebody that deserves it. You know, it's kind of a funny thing.
Yeah, hey, free branding advice for Swan. Get your hodler wings with Swan, right?
This is a good idea. I think
There
that's
you
come
go.
up in a marketing meeting before.
Okay,
I dig it. I dig it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I would just add on to that is it can be pretty tough being in the community too, because even if you're, you know, maybe like a good person trying to get good work done, like you're still on the chopping block. There's no excuses for anything you're doing, so there's no point where you're ever comfortable. I regularly get like, you know, random harassment for like, you know, is what you're doing an attack on Bitcoin? I think you're trying to attack. I think you're trying to jam things into the network. I think you're trying to change the code. Fuck you. Don't do that. So, you know, even when you're just trying to be like a developer trying to improve things, you also get that energy. There's a line at which it can be like kind of autoimmune, where you're getting too much flack for the stuff you're doing. It can prevent you doing something that's good. But at the same time, that's how Bitcoin is, and that's kind of what makes the community special and unique out of all the other things that exist in the world.
Yeah, and it's hard to take time off from Bitcoin as well because it doesn't stop. It's not like the stock market where you have like a weekend off or like they don't trade on a Monday or something every once in a while. So you have this pressure to sort of always stay attached to your project, whether it's as a developer, a trader. You know, you guys obviously building out Swan and turning it into this massive thing with onboarding people constantly and Clubhouse and all these other things. It's like there's always this sort of this ball to push up the hill. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's why you need a team, right? That's why you need allies and you need people you can communicate to and vent to. Like you need other devs that you can talk to say, dude, we're getting a lot of heat for this right now. You know, like so it's I think that's where the collaborative effort is interesting because you see this like aspect of okay, sovereignty, self-sovereignty, but at the same time we do still kind of need each other. That's how the network works, right? It's like everybody's a node, everybody has this like you can't transact with yourself, right? You need other people. And when you come here and you see how much support Bitcoin has, like you see a lot of people like from a cross section that you wouldn't necessarily anticipate, right? Because you're so used to your own like echo chamber, like your crew, your people, and then you see completely different people like boomers that are like, damn, I just can't wait till there's an ETF so I can, you know, so I can put my IRA in there, and like that's awesome to me. I think that's awesome because that's like a really big floodgate that can open, and it helps everybody that's in the space really because the more legitimacy that is placed on like different on ramps, right? Whether it's like a debit card or whatever, then it's just more ways for people to adopt it in their language. Not everybody's going to be able to digest the elephant in one bite. You know, they're gonna fall in love with the tail or the trunk, and then that it's like that's fine. Just keep walking, keep your hands on the beast, and then eventually you'll be able to kind of see what it really is. And I think that's the key. And sometimes you need a helping hand for that. You need education. You need awesome articles and stuff like that to get that. And the quality of the content now is so good that it busts every FUD that's out there. Whereas like in 2014, I remember when I first like really learned about Bitcoin, it was like Silk Road, this guy's going to jail, you know? And so it's like this completely different thing now. It's like we're talking about Bitcoin being like they talk about it on CNBC that it's gonna like, oh, is Bitcoin gonna replace the dollar? Like that's a big topic. That's like are there aliens? Is Bitcoin like that's where we're at, right? We're at that level. Like are UFOs real? Is Bitcoin gonna replace the dollar? Like that's like where it is on the scoreboard right now in terms of like I would say the consciousness of Bitcoiners. You know?
Going back to your point about the sneaky way in for boomers with an ETF or something like that, maybe they don't have the full Bitcoin values in mind at the time. However, the hard part is buying your first Satoshi.
Yeah.
Anything after that, you know, you're incentivized, you're going to pay attention more, and most of those people end up with more. Although then you maybe have to get bathed by the fire of volatility, and you might check yourself and you might realize that this is a long-term game, or I'm going to lose my Satoshis. Yeah, the gravity, I guess, is the meta concept here that comes to mind. This thing just pulls people in. And you can ask the question, where are all the good critics, right? And have this idea of the paradox of the Bitcoin hater, which is that as soon as you learn enough about Bitcoin in order to critique it intelligently, most people just decide that they should buy it because they see it for what it is, they see the beauty of it, and it obviously compels you to buy it. So I find that pretty funny.
Who would you categorize as being a good, legitimate critic of Bitcoin? Do you think there are any out there, or do you think it's like an empty set?
I think the good critics today are not good because I think their ideas are right, but I think that they're powerful, which would be coming from the MMT crowd. I strongly disagree with the ethos, but there's a lot of people who see economic inequality and they think that's the expedient route to fix it. And there might be some truth to that in the short term, throw money at the problem. I think it ultimately undermines society, but the scary part is these ideas are powerful, and understanding why they're not a good idea is really hard. And so I would say those type of things.
Yeah, I think another category of good critic that is anybody who looks at Bitcoin and says, I'm just going to build something else. Like, I think we need something like this. It's like you've agreed on the basis that you need something, but they're like, I think it needs to be something a little bit different. So, I'm not a huge fan, but like Ethereum, for example, Vitalik, he was a Bitcoiner at one point. He said, okay, well, I want this other thing. So he went off. Like, I think that is a pretty interesting camp of critic because it's still like, there's still that agreement that like, yeah, things are going to change. And hey, anybody who like puts hard work in, like I think that counts for something compared to somebody who just tries to dismiss it out of hand and keep their existing system still established.
Yeah, because they're actually trying to build something, whether it has merit or not, right? And I think like the thing I was thinking about when you said it was the good is the enemy of the great. So the number 2 or number 3 person is always the enemy of the number 1. In sports or whatever else, you get this sort of like apathy from leading, and a lot of like in race car driving, like the leader will sometimes crash out while under no pressure, just because they let their mind wander a little bit. And that is the good thing that the Cyber Hornet sort of toxic maxi sort of vibe, it pushes everybody, kind of funnels people in so that no one gets so comfortable that they just ossify and stop.
Yeah, we benefit from that competitive pressure quite a lot.
Yeah, and to be fair, like I'm sure as a dev, you want to be putting a BIP out there in a way, right? You're human. Like you want to be one of the people leading the right decision and winning the arguments or winning the debates or whatever. And I think that's a big deal, And I think that's good because it encourages that sort of that I want to do well for myself, but I'm also pushing everybody. We're all pushing everybody.
Everybody's got coins, so ultimately, if somebody's got a better argument than you, it's going to make Bitcoin better, and you'll ditch those weak arguments pretty fast.
But that's the stay humble part.
Yeah.
Right. And and I think the reason why a lot of people rage quit is because they have no humility. And so they're here to fix it. They're here to beat it. They're here to do better. And it doesn't benefit the group. They're just trying to serve their own ego and get likes. They might as well just be taking selfies and putting them on TikTok.
Let me read you my my pinned tweet because I think that it kind of captures the ethos that I have around some of these things. It's worth clarifying. I don't give a single fuck if BIP 119 check template verify specifically is activated or not. I want the functionality in whatever form, e.g. no input, to fix critical gaps in Bitcoin's armor, decentralization, scaling, self-custody, privacy, let's fucking go. That's the mindset that you have to have when you're trying to improve Bitcoin. It's all about the end result. It's not about the process.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Because you have the light at the end of the tunnel, and you can say, guys, that's where we need to go. Right. And you can lead everybody there together as a team. And the thing I used to say, because I was a starting pitcher, so I was one of 5 guys on the team that was like supposed to win the game that on my particular day. And I said, listen, it's great if I'm the number 1 pitcher on the team. That's fine. That's cool. But if I'm the number 3 pitcher, we're going to be a lot better because I'm pretty fucking good. So if there's 2 guys better than me, great. Yeah. We're gonna maul people. It's gonna be awesome. And I think that sort of humility, even when you're successful, is very hard to cultivate. It's something that you might be either born with or taught because you're raised right, or maybe you go through some pain as a kid. But I think like pain is a part of the journey, right? In Buddhism, the first thing that they lead with is like to be human is to suffer, right? To hodl, hodling is hard.
Yes.
It's not.
This is an important point.
It's not the string. It's like a moat with alligators and like a rickety ladder and like you might drop some stuff along the way. You might twist your ankle. It's not easy to do. You have to have massive grip strength to hold on to a big bag of Bitcoin during all the life volatility. Because everybody grows up at some point. You have these like regular concerns. Real life, you got to pay rent, got to get a car, you got to move around, you got to help a family member, and the more successful you are, the more people are on your case. Realistically speaking, unless you're completely anonymous, which God bless everybody that's managed that. That's great.
Yeah. Speaking of that, it's the hero's journey, right? You have the shitcoin sirens calling your name when the numbers going up. You got to hold fast, get through the challenges. And another point you made, CJ, about intellectuals. I'm going to tie it to intellectuals. So on the sports team, you want to be on a good team. You want better players. You want your practice squad to kick your ass every day to make you ready for the game. And a lot of fiat intellectuals get butthurt when we criticize their ideas. They're used to being the smart guy in academia. Everyone just goes along to get along, get their stuff published, whatever. And then the Bitcoiners come in. They don't care who you are, and they fight with your ideas. They wrestle with them. They tell you when you're wrong. They don't care about it. And so a lot of content creators in Bitcoin feel like they want to contribute, right? It compels you to contribute. And then you look around and you say, I'm intimidated because I've never seen so much intellectual density in one place. How can I even contribute? And what it does is it creates this team or this fraternity environment where we're sharpening each other's tools.
Yeah.
And it makes me personally, and other people have said this, makes me want to be a better person and makes me be the best version of myself to contribute to this thing and gain respect in a community of people that I respect. And so that type of environment, that furnace, is just going to continue getting stronger, bigger, faster, pulling more people in. And you're going to take these, the trash on fiat, more just the fiat people, they're going to start getting converted, have their time preference be lowered, start looking to the future, having hope. And that's where you express the best version of humanity when you're thinking long term.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for more of the academic economists to get into the space. I had the pleasure of going to the Chicago blockchain conference, and there's a difference between like an econometrist, an economist, academically, and like a policy economist. The academic economists, like the theoretical economists, they are absolutely savage. Like you're sitting in one of these things, and somebody's like, to start, I want to like list my assumptions. And they like get that far into the talk, and other economists who have like Nobel prizes, they're like, by the way, that's complete bullshit. You can't use that assumption. And like it's just like it's amazing to watch. And as that energy, I think Bitcoiners have that kind of energy. But as we get more and more sophisticated thinkers coming in, pushing that even further, I think Bitcoin only gets better and more robust. And we're going to test our assumptions and designs, and we're going to fix any of the flaws in them. So I'm really excited about how that energy only gets more and more robust over time.
That's why I respect the Monero guys so much. They always reply guys on Bitcoin tweets, but they do hit us with fungibility and privacy and the risks that those come with. And I think that their points are valid to go back to another player. I get frustrated with them, but it's because they have a point. Monero is not the answer, but the points they bring up need to be examined.
Well, and the bigger Bitcoin is, the more gravity pulls in people into that black hole, right? So as people like me come in that are not a programmer, not a Wall Street guy or anything like that, I'm sort of I worked really hard for my money and I don't want to lose it, right? So I'm a hard money guy. That's like sort of my main mindset. And I'm like a diversity hire, so to speak, right? Because I'm not somebody that's building anything necessarily myself, right? But like I'll get on a podcast, I'll talk about stuff. I've got other outside experiences. I'm coming in as a 40-year-old today. I'm 40 right now. So it's like, it's different than someone that's a Zoomer, right? That's like lived behind their screen, and then they have this whole like web of connection.
Yeah.
I'm used to this. I'm used to like thousands of people gathering, going to a conference or something. It's like I've done this a couple times, but I'm drawn in, right? And then people are drawn in because I'm drawn in, and then somebody's drawn in because they're drawn in. Because if you're close to people in your social circle, like it's impossible to be the only Bitcoiner in your social circle. You know what I mean? So like when I go back to California after this, and I go talk to my employees about how awesome the event was, and the energy, and like the talks, and the passion, and the taproot activation, and all these things that are happening right in the space, I'm like, I'm gonna do a Bitcoin meetup. I'm gonna do a Bitcoin meetup. I'm done. I'm going for it. Because you just 2 years ago I never would have thought that I'd be doing that, but now I'm so inspired to do it that I'm like, I don't even care who comes. I want to keep the train going, you know. And if that's locally for me, that's cool. If like 20 people show up, and maybe it's 21 the next month or something like that, it's like, okay, we did it. We're growing. It's important to do that kind of everywhere, I think. In my mind.
The visual I have in my head when you describe that, CJ, is that Bitcoin star. I'm going to use the mass as an example. Let's say a star. In the beginning, it was the cypherpunks, the anarchists, the gold bugs, technology nerds, etc. So it's a very small, dense mass with very little surface area. Each one of these hype cycles, you bring in a new class of entrants, which increases the mass, which exponentially increases the surface area.
Yeah.
And so as you get bigger, now you have the ability to interface with people that a tech nerd absolutely doesn't have access to, right? So that surface area keeps getting bigger. Bitcoin's values, the challenge here is that Bitcoin's values are going to be slightly watered down as we grow, right? And that's where that cultural element, the values imbued, how we hold each other in check. Sometimes autoimmune disease, we attack our own, but it's kind of that challenge. More surface area, more people, broader perspective, more normal people. But then also as the hard base, we have to figure out a way to onboard these folks into the values.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are going to outdo us. We're going to build something so big, and then we're going to let it get captured.
Yeah, well, I think I really like the slogan that like Bitcoin is money for enemies, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a certain thing where like the more Bitcoiners that you hate, maybe the better Bitcoin is, that, you know, because there's a bigger community and you shouldn't necessarily have to have common ground with everybody, but you can agree on what the definition of money is and how the economy is formed.
And if you look geopolitically, it very much feels that we're at the end of our current financial system and we're looking to the future. What is this going to be? And it feels like now we can have a multipolar world. We could have a decapolar world if we wanted to. And, you know, if US and China are doing trade, we want to use dollars, they want to use yuan. Now we have this incredibly neutral base layer protocol for enemies.
And it's literally the same value regardless of where it is. And that's the hardest thing is, you know, like, work has been sort of exposed through the pandemic and all that stuff. Everybody's working from home, and that, in a way, that creates a need for international, not just domestic sound money, because now we're more. You know, we're pulling for the plebs and all these other countries to like have sound money, to have something to hold on to, because everybody works hard at their job if they care, right? And there's not just because some evil dictator runs a country doesn't mean the people. You know what I mean? So it's like what we do and what you do specifically, like that benefits people that you'll never meet. You know what I mean? You'll never meet ever in your life. And
if I build it correctly, I'll definitely never meet them.
Right? Yeah, you'll never have to. Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's cool. I think that's really neat that somebody working at their terminal, wherever that is, can impact literally billions of people by being part of the most important, you know, like money that's ever existed.
And it comes full circle too. If you think about all the people around the world, all the talent, all the human capital that currently cannot contribute to the global economy because maybe capital controls, maybe the U.S. government has sanctions, maybe they just don't have a bank because they're too hard for the industry to bank. So you have all this talent that can't contribute. And if you bring all that human capital online, who are we going to find in Zimbabwe with the best idea, a prodigy, a Nikola Tesla, a Mozart, hiding in the cracks? They just can't get over that hump. They don't have a chance. So we allow talent to participate at a higher degree. That's going to come back around and improve humanity in ways that are extremely hard to predict. Imagine Mozart pre-piano. Right?
Yeah, 0 to 1 on the piano thing, right? That's a big one. Like you can't. It's not like drums. You know what I mean? Like you could just like flip a bucket over and play the drums on a bucket. Like a grand piano or something requires a lot of resources. And I think we miss a lot of. I'm sure generationally we've missed thousands and millions of talented people that have been stuck in a regime that would not let them do something inspirational, wouldn't let them be an artist or a writer. I mean, you know, or a musician or any of these things that like could inspire thousands of local people, millions of international people, because they're like, oh wait, they might have their own voice and it might be dissenting to my political rule. Right? So and now, I mean, whether it's like Sphinx chat or whatever, like there's ways of getting your stuff out there, right? Like it's almost impossible mentally now to think of like a Nelson Mandela, right, prisoner level, like political prisoner, because it would be so outrageous in a Bitcoin standard world to see that, because the word would get out there so quick that there'd be so much pressure to let people like that out. You know what I mean? And I think that's where that's what I see as like the sort of the human condition improving.
Those things are always in hindsight, though. Like I think 20 years from now, we'll be looking back on Ross, for example, in that sort of light of like, how could we have done this?
Yeah, we just it's like the biggest problem with like, I mean, I'm very political in certain ways, but not in other ways. But I think like having a two-party system hurts people like him, because there's always these people that are getting voted in and voted out and voted in. So there's nobody really has like they can't keep their finger on the button long enough to like really learn enough, because the politicians are like dealing with other bullshit, so they're not ever like, it's never going to be such a big deal until we have real Bitcoiners in Congress, real Bitcoiners as governors and things like that, which is that's not very far away.
It's happening. It's starting now. Yeah.
Suarez is all over it. And other people are going to be like jealous of him. They're going to be like, all right, let's do it. Let's be Bitcoin people. Just they'll do it for political reasons now, because Bitcoin is going to be a political party at some point. In a way, it's going to be a single issue vote for some people.
Right.
It's going to expand the Overton window of politics as well, right? We think we're having this open democratic debate, and we have the best ideas rise to the top.
It's very filtered.
We're in this tight, narrow band of what's acceptable to talk about, and there's an incredible blue ocean around it. And the interesting thing about Bitcoiners is we are diverse, and we don't trust, we verify. We start from the ground floor and build our assumptions up, and if we don't, our buddy attacks us online, and we check ourselves, we start over. So if we start from the ground up and reimagine what individuals are and what a state is and how that relationship is, I think we might create a world that's incredibly different than we have today, right? But we have this like incremental process, and there's no new land to experiment with forms of governance. So we're sort of in this glass ceiling of social scalability, where the state is a relic of our industrial revolution, right? Large state, large army, more power, more resources. That's the metagame we're all playing. And we're kind of stuck here. That's a dead end. And Bitcoin has this ability to replace the property rights system, right? Life, liberty, and property. John Locke said that the state's job is to protect these inalienable rights. And Bitcoin sort of serves as the independent property rights system, where you don't actually need a state to enforce that. So if you think long term, Bitcoin as a system is going to slowly dissolve the political apparatus we have now, because it's not needed to have a better system, an emergent system.
Yeah, but there has to be consistency and a consciousness from Bitcoiners to participate in that system and not stay super anonymous. And some people, there are always going to be people like Bitcoin's like an iceberg in a way. Like there's the people that are tweeting, that are prominent, that are posting blogs and posting Telegram chats and all this stuff. And then there's people that we don't really even know, And I think that the people that are willing to get out there, if they work together to like have roundtable discussions, whether it's one-on-one or whatever, it doesn't matter what the venue is. But it's like if everybody wants something to go, like a BIP, right? Then we need to push that, because if we don't replace what's there, then we're doomed to just have the same stuff but a worse version. Because as we vote those people out, if we don't replace them with ourselves, what are we going to get?
So I actually think the whole meme of like the Bitcoin Citadel is actually kind of a negative concept, because I'm a pretty big extrovert and I love people and I love society. Like I'm not trying to just like pull up on a farm for the rest of my life. And I see the appeal of that, but I definitely think that as we're looking at reshaping society, Bitcoin competes with government service for a monetary layer. But I still want to see a functioning society where I can go to an event with 12,000 people, and in the anarchistic citadel world, like that wouldn't really happen. I think that's something that I don't want to necessarily lose out on.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, is like it's hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Like the Citadel, in a way, is sort of a worst case scenario.
You hope you never have to go there.
Yeah, it's like okay, we're ready to do that if we have to.
Like, I've got a nuclear bunker in my backyard, but
that's awesome.
Shit, if I've got to go down there.
Yeah, you're like, dang it, I have to eat MREs for like 4 years until we figure something out. But that's really what it is to me. I agree with you. It's like society is great when it functions well, and I think socially, that's where like you see the networks that we build intentionally and unintentionally. We sort of find ourselves in, and you meet just unbelievable people in the Bitcoin space, and it's like I'm like Brandon and I are obviously in this like we're in this like chef chat on Telegram, right? So it's like people posting videos about like their like sizzle vids, right? I said it's like ooh, check it out and put this meat on the grill, you know, and it's really funny, you know, because we talk about it in a sense that like, oh, could we grow this food on like a a co-op farm that we Bitcoin farm together or whatever? But then it's like, yeah, or we could just like build companies and take over those other companies and then be better versions of these other guys and find a way to stay uncorrupted by being at the top layer of that, because there's not a money printer for Bitcoin. You know what I mean? It's like you have to work your ass off to be a miner and to actually earn Bitcoin. And so I think that difficulty keeps everybody in check, because you can't get too egotistical about it, because like we talked about, I think the most famous, business guy in the world gets absolutely ripped apart, like string cheese if he steps out of line. And
Yeah.
and that aspect, it's like you have to be, it's like proof of mission, is sort of that thing. And that's where we all keep each other in check by communicating, by staying in touch. Because I'm gonna read something that Brandon says about mushrooms, and I'm gonna be like, it's literally like not in my wheelhouse at all. I'll read it because it's different. I'm willing to have a heterogeneous like exposure in that sense and not be, so single lane, But 10 years ago, I was very much paranoid, and I was a gold bug, like 10 or 12 years ago, because I was like, I don't trust the stock market. I don't trust it. So it's the same thing.
Right.
Like the same inspiration for me led me to Bitcoin, just a much better version of all those things. And now I've learned about all these other aspects of it and met so many better people. I'm like, wait a second, there's so much more possibility now with this, because it's digital and we can scale it, we can share it and move it across, and what that brings along with it, and the bandwidth and the pipeline and the skills that you have. Nobody's just one thing, right? We're not just a number, not just a statistic, not just a chef, not just a pretty face, right? So everybody has a beating heart and a brain, and you never know when inspiration can strike anybody. Anybody could be the next, special thing. And you think about like crowdsourcing, like a great invention, through Bitcoin or something like that. There's all these other angles that we could create that currently are, they're limited because it's government grants basically determine the success of projects at this point, which sucks.
Well, I have Jeremy here, and you guys, CJ and Brandon definitely weigh in too, but I'd like to talk about taproot activation and the method that was chosen, right? I mean, there's a good debate about this, and it's important because this is, the way Bitcoin scales and grows and changes. So I guess first question is, where did you what did you advocate in the debate on how to activate Taproot, and why? And can you evaluate just the ideas behind the actual arguments for and against, and do you think it was important? Like, does it actually matter? Like, how big of a deal is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's definitely a lot of noise around this. I found talking to people here that the noise did not reach most people. They say, oh yeah, it's just like activating, locking in, right? We're good. We don't need to do anything. So, but there was a lot of argumentation around what should happen. I think what ultimately was going on is people felt like there's this gradient descent process by which developers slowly and incrementally are like, this is a little bit better, this is a little bit better, this is a little bit better, here's this parameter, we set it. And we got down to this bottom of this valley, and there was one last little decision to go of left or right. And some people said, oh, left is a cliff. And other people said, well, like, right is a volcano. And there was not any way to get consensus on that. And there were two groups that emerged from that. One group that said, okay, clearly the bottom of this valley is like not a good place to be. And another that said, nah, you're just going to go with us off the cliff or into the volcano. I don't want to, make anyone out to be the bad guy on that. But so that sort of led to a circumstance where a small fraction of the community decided to kind of go independently and say, well, we're just going to release code that goes into the volcano, and we think that everybody knows that this volcano is not active and it's going to be a safe place to be. It's actually going to be better because it's like well fortified from other things, and let's see how it goes. What really happened with the rest of the community and where Bitcoin Core ended up moving is they said, okay, let's go to a different valley. I had proposed actually a year prior the rough sketch of the design that we ended up going with which was to say, hey, as soon as we release software, start collecting signals. That's what you saw, where the software client released and it was already basically going to be signaling like a week later. And we won't actually turn the feature on until many months later because we want to give people time to upgrade once we know it's actually going to be locked in.
Yep.
That I think is a pretty good place to be because you run a services business, like you don't really like the idea that like, oh yeah, we've got a year-long period, and by the way, you're going to get 2 weeks notice, and you've got to turn on a new thing. Like that kind of sucks. So you kind of want to have a world where you learn that a new feature is coming, and then you have an amount of time.
Right.
But what ended up happening, and I think this is something that there's some parallels actually with the gold bug movement, which I can get into, is the movement of people who felt like the volcano was the right place to be. They kind of, everybody had their own pet project of like what they thought was good about the volcano rather than the actual main feature. And so they invented ideas that were generally cross-cutting, unpopular with different folks in different ways, rather than like the core of what they thought was important. And everybody else just said, okay, this seems like a good enough thing. If this doesn't work, we can always back it out and try something else. This leaves a lot of options on the table. Most of the people who thought the volcano could be good, they said, well, yeah, that place isn't that bad either. We'll check it out with you. Sure. And it turns out that was uncontroversial enough that it worked out. Yeah. The parallel that I draw with the gold bug thing is like, you're a hard money maximalist. At the end of the day, like you don't care about, you can tell me if I'm wrong, you don't care about gold, you don't care about Bitcoin, you care about the hardest money that you can get. Right now, for the foreseeable future, that is Bitcoin. And that's where like you stay on that mission. A lot of gold bugs, they're not hard money maximalists, they're gold bugs. And so when Bitcoin came along, they said, well, no, I believe in gold. I believe in gold, nothing else, and that's going to challenge my
so
narrative.
shiny.
Right?
I gotta have it.
I gotta have it.
There's so much of it. I want to be Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, and so I think people just kind of like fixated on like specific parameters rather than on what they were trying to accomplish. And because of that, like you had like all these conflicting ideas going in, and they just didn't quite achieve consensus on getting enough other people to really commit to that, and they weren't willing to entertain like the long-term things. Like, okay, well, like what do you do about this thing? You say, well, it's not going to happen. It's like, okay, well, like asteroid mining, for example. They're like, what's going to happen when you mine the asteroids? It's like, well, that's never going to happen. It's like, well, it might happen, and what are you going to like? How are you going to adjust?
Literally attempting to land on asteroids.
Yeah.
So to pick up on that, I think the thing for me to say is that thematic motivation is easier to keep for a longer period of time, and then you can kind of refine it and refine it and refine it. And I think sometimes people get specific motivation, like they want to get back at a person or they want to get back at a thing, and then then it's like, then what? Like you whack the mole, right? Now what? Now what do you do? And so, but the theme keeps you in line, keeps everybody moving. And if the goal is to like, I mean, I guess some people, I would say from a dev standpoint, having talked to a couple of guys, some people believe that the base layer is going to ossify and solidify, and then that will kind of be it, and then we'll have to just keep building a layer 2, layer 3, and keep scaling up those solutions, and that'll be easier in a way because then it's sort of the tree sort of goes multiple directions, but the roots are super solidified. And that's where I'm very fascinated from the technical standpoint when I try to read about this stuff and read essays and things. I'm not a coder in any way, but I'm very inspired by the fact that that it's been created in that manner. And the volcano, right? An inactive volcano is a great place to build a layer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's a great place because there's only one way in. You know what I mean? And I think that aspect of it keeps the solid nature that we respect as people that are putting a lot of their net worth into Bitcoin. Is like you want something hard. You want something hard to attack. You want something easy to defend. And then it's like if there's elements of like, let's say lightning or liquid or any of these other things that are kind of whatever comes next after those things, if one of those things has an issue, it's not systemic to the whole thing. Whereas if the base layer is a octopus duck with a lizard tail and lives in a tree, like it doesn't necessarily help anybody if it goes extinct. You know what I mean? So it just makes, and that's the argument that I always make when I talk to people that are like multi-coiners. It's like, guys, just think about it this way, right? Like you have this base layer that's unbeatable. It's unbeatable versus all these other things. And so you can build really whatever you want to do on it if you're good enough. But there's like you have to hurdle that,
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people, I think, they say that, oh, I like the technology of this other thing, which, I'm not a technology maximalist. Like I said, I'm a hard money maximalist. I believe in like a thematic future where we evolve as people, but I don't want to see the evolution at the cost of health, safety oriented, those are the things. And I think the Bitcoiners that I meet that are even the developers and the guys that are running, Bitcoin native services or whatever, they have a belief that what they're doing today is a step forward in the future that's going to last.
Yeah, I think that the main thing that as a community we should try and focus on is, rather than arguing about the technology and how we're advancing that, it's a little bit too concrete. It's defining like our KPIs and OKRs, or for people who don't speak Google PM. It's like I never did anything at Google, but it's key performance indicators and objective key results. It's like, what are we actually trying to do? I've tried to personally define like scalability, privacy, decentralization, and self custody as things that you could kind of objectively measure how well we're doing at it, and then say, okay, look, if we are not able to meet what we need in these layers, like we probably need to inspect what we're doing at the base layer and make modifications so that we can better open up the ecosystem. I definitely believe in the ecosystem, that things should live mostly as what people are doing on top. But if we're not providing a wide enough route, if we're not into the aquifer, like we need to, we need to widen that a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy a lot.
When I think about the upgrades to the protocol, I think from a high level, that's my instinct here, which is that we're building something different. This is not something that's easy to change, and that's intentional, right? This isn't going to be a 4-year cycle where the politicians make rules next year to change it. This is the attempt at removing humans' proclivity to taint our institutions, to use the weakness in humans and destroy the institutions, which then cascade down and destroy society. And so the fact that it is hard, it's contentious, it's slow, that's what affords us the chance to build a new type of institution that might last 1,000 years.
Instead of something that is going to get voted out of office in 4 years. And that's the biggest problem with our two-party system now, is you have these people that'll do anything to get reelected, including destroy all the things that they got elected on or whatever, or something that somebody else built. And I think that's the more things you can bolt into the Bitcoin ecosystem, because it is hard to change, and that's awesome. You don't have one guy that goes, hey, well, and then everything's like, and it's like shorted out, and that's the thing that I have as the biggest fear for people like, explain it like, listen, you could when you go to the Brazilian steakhouse, right? You're there for the meat. That's the reality, right? When you look at the salad bar and you're like, that's cool. You got all these colors, get some different artisanal croutons and some gorgeous looking tomatoes. If you go to the Brazilian steakhouse and you fill up on the salad bar, you're an idiot. You're paying $50, to eat the beef, to eat all the beef you can. And the thing is like, you can squish a bunch of tomatoes together and it'll never be 500 pounds of Brussels sprouts. And you might get the same sort of protein out of that, because there's like 4 grams of protein in the Brussels sprout serving or broccoli or whatever, but it's never going to be the meat, right? And that's the hard money that we want. And that's what we want to build around and use as the staple, and then we can just go up. And it really, like, the multiple layers of Bitcoin solve all the problems that a lot of these other coins are trying to do anyways. It's like, oh, that's cute, you guys are doing this. Well, we can do that on Bitcoin too. Like, if it's a good enough idea, right? If it's worth it, if it's worth a layer 3 or layer, eventually there'll be like probably 6 layers, like the way the internet works now. It's like Uber is like it's like a 6-layer stack, right? We have like GPS and banks and drivers and their communication and all this other stuff. So eventually, like, if we're running that type of stuff on Lightning or Bitcoin or whatever comes next after that, after Lightning, then that'll be great, because then we'll have this like predictability to it that people can really count on, and you can trust the protocol more than you can trust the other people, which we've everybody that I live in California now, so I know I can't trust the people above me in any sort of government capacity to make the good decisions. So, and a lot of people live in a lot worse places with dirt floors, and they definitely cannot trust their government to do what's right for them. But you can trust Bitcoin, and you can build on that. You can make plans for having a Bitcoin future if you want to live a Bitcoin standard.
One point you brought up there is the layers, and I think this is a very interesting part of Bitcoin, where some people say Bitcoin is slow, dumb, expensive, but it doesn't do a lot. That's true, and that's where you have the layers. And this isn't just some cop out from the Bitcoin boomers saying we'll just figure it out later. This is actually based in biology. This is how nature scales. Gall's law, for example, if you want to make a complex system, you start with a simple system. You can't start with a complex system. And if you go through the whole stack of our physical reality, from particles to biological cells to organules to organs to an organism, each one of these layers are specialized systems that have very simple rules. And those simple rules interact with each other. And emerging out of that becomes complexity. And the specialized layer are being able to produce human beings, which are these amazing machines designed to simply pass on our genes. And the complexity here again is from these simple base layers. And so, looking long term, Bitcoin has the simple part, and we can build as much as we need to on top of this thing. But if you don't have a strong foundation, top layers are irrelevant. If you don't have the laws of particle physics driving this emerging complexity, there is no complexity.
So I think one thing I would push back against of the like organic analogies is like the reason why nature works is because organisms die, and I really do not want Bitcoin to die. So we kind of have like one shot at getting this stuff right, and that's where part of what I worry about is like, okay, if we're building a system, I worry about this for Lightning, for example, and we're saying, okay, we're gonna have all these channels, and then we're gonna have, let's say, enough channels that if they all wanted to close, it would fill like, like a year of blocks. Like to me, that's an issue where if there's like a, like a systematic reason why people need to like move out from like, let's say, Lightning to Lightning V2 that you brought up some new thing, like that would cause a pretty big churn inside of the system and would be essentially like an organic disorder. And so I think that that's where part of what I really want to see is the ability for at the lower layers that we're building to have a little bit more nimbleness. And it's not, I think it's not counter to ossification. Like people maybe forget that ossification isn't turning to stone, it's turning into bone, and bones break and they heal. And I think that's where, as a protocol, that we should have more thinking around when things violate our assumptions, how do we repair them and how do we make progress towards, making a better and stronger organism through not an evolutionary process, because we don't want Bitcoin to die and be reborn, but through a fortification process.
It's bricks. It's building with bricks, not just meat, right? Yeah, I like that.
Is my mic off? Oh, there we go. There's some types of organisms, let's say like a fungi, which is, I've done a lot of thinking and writing about this, and some of those organisms, they actually upgrade themselves over time. There's some that we have now that are thousands of years old that over time, essentially fungi are chemists. They're the best chemists we have. They're the centralized intelligence network, and they digest the world around them externally, whereas we have internal stomachs, right? And these organisms are able to learn. Let's say a predator comes and attacks the network. They say, okay, here comes this complex molecule. They send information through the network. They create a custom enzyme never before created to then address this predator. And over time, it has this entire library of new molecules over thousands of years. And let's say that organism is in a dire situation. They also have this ability to absorb genetic information from a separate organism in their ecosystem, horizontal gene transfer instead of vertical. And that, I guess that's the lens I think about with Bitcoin, because I agree we shouldn't be trying to just reproduce past genes. We should be trying to create an immortal organism that has the ability to learn. And to your point specifically, Jeremy, I like that regard to we have to be nimble. And I just lost my train of thought.
One thing I was going to say though is that it's easier to be nimble when it's more distributed, right? And as more people have Bitcoin, then there'll be smaller transfers. If you imagine like we're at the point where, let's say Bitcoin is worth $1 million or $5 million a coin or whatever, if you back that down to say a Satoshi is worth X, right? So if a Satoshi is worth like 50 cents of today's American dollar, then there'll be a lot of incentive to transact on a very small layer. So it'll continually incentivize people that are mining, people that are transacting to stay on a quick, efficient platform and move around and do things. But the best part about Bitcoin, it doesn't matter how many layers there are, you always have a base layer, right? So you always be able to transact on the base layer as long as it's still retains its fundamental capabilities that it does today. So even if there is like, in 35 years, there's 4 layers up there, right? Well, we can still do it like an old school. Hey, yo, man, you want to do one of those analog Bitcoin transfers, man, they'll do the moon signal. Like I read about that somewhere the other day that they're like, someone's like, oh, we could bounce it off the moon. We could bounce a transaction off the moon. And it's just really fascinating for me, like how creative. Like someone's like, oh, we could do it over ham radio. You know what I mean? It's just great. That's the thing. That necessity breeds, invention, obviously, right? And right now, I think we're evolving before the total needs of the worldwide market are there, so that they can then get onboarded easily and then use it easily. That's the ideal. I mean, that's the way I see it. Maybe as a little bit of an outsider, but and that's what I think is so cool is that you're going to be able to buy stuff and then if you have a 3D printer right at your house, you could like download a program that prints your goods at your house instead of needing to order a bunch of cardboard boxes from Amazon. Like that's really the future that I see. You know what I mean? Be way better.
That we talked about earlier and what you just referenced here. Bitcoin has this sort of defensive posture, right? The ham radio, self-custody, bounce off satellites, all these redundancies and resilience built in. And the hope here, same with the citadels, is that we do not have to use these, but it is in a way it's a threat that says if you attack Bitcoin, we can go into this defensive posture, which makes your attack really hard. So then it changes the calculus in the beginning, saying, do I actually want to risk the attack? Because if you come at the king, you best not miss.
I think this also connects back to where we got into this discussion with Brady's question about like what's going on with these upgrades. Is that it's building those robust processes, and that's really where the contention was. Is people felt like, okay, well, right now we're in this time of peace, and so if we have uncontroversial changes that everybody kind of agrees on, we don't really need to be flexing on everyone. And I think that was sort of the disagreement. Is like people are like, well, like when we need to flex on them, like we'll do it, and there are options for that. Like if we see, like I think that the China mining news was pretty big. That could have gone a very different way. That went the way of you can sell your miners. Okay, cool. They're gonna like end up in other countries. It really could have gone, we have disappeared all of you and we now run your operations. And by the way, now we're going to have 51% of the network and we're going to, only mine transactions that have been approved by the Communist Chinese Party. If that had happened, then the community would have said, okay, well, we're going to reevaluate how we're doing proof of work. We're going to find a different consensus mechanism. We're going to do this horizontal gene transfer. We'll look and survey out what else is out there that could be good or applicable to Bitcoin, taking our own knowledge as well, that, we think ASICs generally are a good thing. But that's where I think that the time of peace, where it's where everything's relaxed and things can kind of just go. But it's where when somebody actually tries to make a more targeted attack onto Bitcoin, we have many defensive options that we can go and start using. And I think that is you don't need to operate in the same way during all times. You operate differently when there are different types of active threat.
Zoom me up there. So so I think like seeing what Iran has done, right, where they were like repoing miners and stuff like that, and they're like, we'll mine ourselves, we'll do it ourselves. I think that's what's interesting to say, that you need to have certain structures and creativity in place to say, okay, what would we do? You have to run that think tank kind of brain and talk to each other and say, what would we do if they tried this? Right now, the biggest attack on Bitcoin is FUD. I mean, it's really like it's not illegal. Like the SEC doesn't regulate people shit posting Bitcoin, right? They don't regulate Nouriel Rubini or any of these other guys going on and talking crap about Bitcoin. So because it's not really like it's not mainstream enough of an asset yet in that regard, that they've created specific laws against it. But right, eventually, if you have enough, Cynthia Lummis's up there, they might get to that point, or Davidson's or Suarez's or whatever, and in a way, the allies of Bitcoin now, like band together to sort of fight the FUD, right? That's what the whole thing is like. There's like another Telegram group I'm a part of. I'm not sure who's in it, but it's like FUD busters or whatever. And so we link like these sort of FUD busting articles and we share those with people when we get hit with like, oh, China mining or taxes or whatever. At the end of the day, I really think the way it's going to go is that some of the FUD sources are going to get exposed because people are going to put a bounty on like who's causing this, and if it's XRP or if it's one of these other like competing protocols in a way, and they get outed as like the FUD promoters, like they're going to get nuked by the cyber hornets, and it's going to be glorious, and they'll go down in flames, right? And I think we see that.
Is it XRP? Is that something you know? That's like I've heard people whispering.
That's a
about
theory. That's a big theory right now, and so basically when you're under indictment for a multi-billion-dollar like scam, right, and printing all of it and dumping all of it, and then I mean, it's amazing what their lawyers have done, like to prevent Garlinghouse's like exposure of his personal financial records to see that how much money he's actually made, like literally in his bank account off of selling XRP directly. But I think you look at something like that, and then all of a sudden it turns back into this political thing where you have, oh well, let's assassinate the character of this person because they're a Supreme Court justice nominee or whatever, right? And that's the oldest trick in the book is talk crap on that thing. And the other thing too is a lot of the Wall Street trading firms are basically putting massive cell walls that like we as plebs can't bust through because we don't have $1.5 billion individually to blow through that wall. So you see these like sophisticated trading strategies and stuff. I started really as a day trader. You see that effort to suppress the price in a way because they're like, hey, let's keep a lid on this so we can kind of keep scooping it up, right? And the reason why it's not at 60 grand right now or 70 grand or whatever is because people need it to be at 35 so they can accumulate their war chest. The Black Rocks and those people, they're 100%. They announce, hey, we're going to get into it, but they're shorting it so that they can buy more. Because if they short $1 billion so they can buy $5 billion, it's a net effect that they scoop it up, right? That's the game theory from the other side. That's the big boy game theory. And that's the same way that like McDonald's or any of these other massive corporations go up against each other on a competitive chess game for fast food joints or whatever. It's exactly like that.
But can you blame them? Like if you could scoop up more Bitcoin by doing something, like would you be doing it?
Yeah, well, that's why there's like you can't necessarily fight certain aspects of the economy, right? And I think myself personally, and I know a lot of other people that I talk to, it's like you become impervious to the fluctuations on a daily basis. Where Bitcoin's down 3% a day, you're not like, oh damn it, it's not up today. What am I gonna do? It's not NGU technology today. But for me, I'm just like, okay, listen, I've sort of YOLO'd in at certain points, and I know that as I'm getting chunks of like salary or whatever else, I'm going to 10 years from now benefit from anything that I buy now. Anything that I buy in calendar year 21 will benefit me in calendar year 2031. Yeah. So that's the way you have to think about it. It's like parenting in that sense. It's like the lessons that you teach your kids as kindergartners prevent them from being shitty teenagers, and then shitty spouses or whatever else. So Bitcoin is still a child. It's 12. It's not even. It's turning 13, right? So like that's the next step. So we're gonna get into some cranky adolescent phases where some people that are going to get exposed as having 20, 30, 40,000 Bitcoin that people didn't really know about. And those people are going to start weighing in on stuff from the bleachers. They're going to come out of nowhere in a way, and we'll see some weird stuff on chain, off chain, whatever, commentary wise. And that's to me, like, that's the next level of the game. And I don't know if a lot of people are anticipating that yet, but it's going to, the road from here to there is, it's always been rocky. It's not going to stop that.
I think I saw like a Bitcoin like Mila Kunis interview, and she's talking about like now she's like very like up on it because she personally owns some piece of Ashton or something. And it's like, oh yeah, now she's like, well now I got to say something. It's like my most important asset.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the people that got in. I didn't get in 2012 or 2013 or something where it was really early. But imagine anybody that bought like, let's say 5 figures of 3-figure Bitcoin. Right? Like, where are they now? And it's very hard to hold on to all of it, obviously, but there's people that are using it. I mean, if I was getting paid in Bitcoin, I would be okay spending it on stuff. I use Lightning and some of these other things to buy stuff sometimes, but then I immediately go back onto Cash App or Swan or whatever else, and I buy some more sats. I got to get some more sats that I'm spending as I go. And I think the biggest problem with Wall Street's involvement is they've always proven to be crooked. That's our biggest problem in this next phase, through this next halving, is as it kind of rises or stays volatile, it's what exposure does the price have to manipulation from these efforts of liquidations and leverage trading and expiring options and expiring derivatives, and that's like there was a guy I was talking to yesterday, and he goes, "Yeah, I want to do like a repo rate, like an overnight repo rate on Bitcoin." And someone was like, "What's the rate?" He goes, "Whatever it has to be." I'm like, what the, like this guy, like that's how we got into this mess in the first place. His attitudes like that. Building that on fiat dollars has screwed us multiple times. So now this guy wants to turn that into a Bitcoin instrument. And then he made a comment to me about Ethereum. So I'm doing a podcast later. I'm hosting, and he was like, "Yeah, I'd like you." My partner was like, "Hey, can you come on the podcast?" And I'm like, "Oh, so you like Ethereum, huh? What do you think about the cream line?" And I was like, "You better be ready for this shit tomorrow because I don't know you, so I'll smash you if you try to come up with some fiat shillionaire bullshit on me." You know what I mean? So I don't know. And the guy's probably worth like $80 million or something like that, and worth way more than I am. But I'm not scared of him because I know you guys all have my back if I'm defending Bitcoin.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah. Harry Suddick. Can you tap Harry right there with the white cap? Hey, bud. You want to hop in? All right. So Harry's gonna join. Any of you three are welcome to stay. Brandon, you want to hop out? We're gonna talk some mining for a little bit, and yeah, but anybody's welcome to stick around if you want.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for sitting in, CJ, man.
Go sweat.
Yeah, you had a lot to contribute,
Yeah,
man. I really appreciate it.
I might jump too.
Yeah, perfect.
Go get
I
some
know you
food.
guys have been sitting in for like an hour, so. All right, guys, go enjoy.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it, man.